I really didn't expect to be accepting this award on behalf of my father's group, the Beatles.
The Beatles were fascinated with the Satanist Aleister Crowley. I mean, they even had him on their album cover, along with a bunch of other people that were interested in the occult. There's even some other Crowley Easter eggs that you might not have noticed before, but why did they do this? Let's uncover the truth. Another thing that happened during the Grammys that is kind of interesting is they made an AI Beatles song. Not necessarily that it was created all by AI, but they were awarded a Grammy.
They cleaned it up.
Who was?
Do you even know
awarded?
who the Beatles are? These people on the screen right here.
I've heard of them, but I've only heard the name.
Well, it's interesting. Any one of these award shows, what happens after them? People are going to go home and like start listening to it. And, you get kind of back in the groove, so to say. Mm-hmm. The Beatles, this may seem like super innocent music today, but they had a song called Now and Then that was really awarded. The Beatles, I mean, these guys look super like innocent compared to today's rock stars, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But this was some pretty racy stuff back in the 60s. And I think there's a few things that we should keep in mind about the Beatles. Because, this was a very innocent time, but these guys like single-handedly began a revolution using music. And that was the catalyst that basically began to change a lot of people's lives.
And what year was this? Like 70s, 80s?
This is about the 60s.
60s.
Yeah.
Okay.
And these guys rose to incredible fame in their life. What do you think about their album covers?
That's kind of
Abbey
creepy.
Road.
Yeah, Abbey Road. What do you think about this one?
Oh, that one with the...
Yeah.
It
dolls
is
kinda
bizarre.
creepy.
Now, in today's standards, that looks a little weird, doesn't it?
It does look weird.
It's
Okay.
like they went to the butcher shop.
I think there's a reason why this will make sense in just a second. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts. I mean, it seemed like their albums kind of got a little bit weirder and weirder as the drug world began to like kind of spill out into the population, right? This was supposed to be a concept thing. They put Mr. Aleister Crowley on the cover here. Who's Aleister Crowley? You guys know?
He's basically a Satanist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Is he the one with Do What Thou Will?
Yep.
Yep.
He wrote a couple books. He was a super old in the turn of the century, like around the 1900s, and he really is attributed to being the wickedest man in our kind of lifetime, so to say.
Didn't his mom call him the Beast or something?
They
like
did,
that?
and his dad was a preacher.
And
Actually,
he was into some crazy,
He
all
went-
kinds of stuff.
He went into some pretty crazy things, and he actually wrote some books about the occult. There's a lot of bands over the years that have really been interested in him. The Beatles, that's why they put him on the cover. This is the opening line to Sgt. Pepper. It says in the 1st song, it was 20 years ago today that Sgt. Pepper taught the band to play. And this album came out 20 years after he died.
And it's also interesting that it came out around 20 years after this band started.
Yes.
So it's a really good question of like, who are you referring to?
Exactly. And there's some very weird things, but Aleister Crowley was this super dark individual. And there's bands that have really kind of thrown a lot like back at Aleister Crowley. Rolling Stones is another one. The Black Sabbath, of course, that's like probably not a big shocker, but he had a song called Crowley. The Red Hot Chili Peppers, they were really big into their. They have a album called Magic, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, which was taken after Aleister Crowley's book written on sex magic.
Dude.
Oh, wow.
And that's the crazy thing, because when you think about what he was doing with this magic, like this was him practicing his magic, incorporating all kinds of vile things with children and animals, and they're like, yeah, we're clean boys, but we're doing this on the cover.
Absolutely vile things. In fact, Aleister Crowley had a place that he had gotten a hold of in Italy, and it was called the Abbey. And in this building right here, they had all kind of satanic rituals. They would be into. They would be into it. There was literally no rules.
Wait, did you say this was from the Beatles, this place?
This is
What does this Crowley?
Aleister's.
Aleister Crowley's place
Yeah.
called the Abbey.
Okay.
And here it is. It's written on the walls right here. But this, they had a lot of occult practices that were done and performed here. And evil stuff that had happened in between these walls. Now, isn't that kind of interesting that they would call their album the Abbey Road?
Well,
Yeah.
this is a real road in the UK, though,
It
right?
is. There's a recording.
But
There-
that they actually go out there to take a picture there, and then they also put him on the cover.
And then look at this kind of stuff. I mean, I think when you get into this really dark world, you know, people think of the Beatles as this like innocent group, but these guys have really put out some pretty sick and disgusting things over the years.
Pretty fascinating that he would title his book The Book of the Law, because that's what the first 5 books of the Old Testament are known as.
Right.
The Book of the Law, you know, the books of Moses, the Torah, you know, all kinds of different names, but it's known as the Book of the Law.
Yeah, and he was quoted saying that the "do what thou wilt" is the whole of the law. So it's almost the exact
opposite.
opposite of what the Bible would say. You know, it's like thinking of others, right? Are they thinking of others right here? Probably not,
Probably
right?
not.
I mean, this is a definite like dark thing, but it's interesting. Back in the '60s, when they really started actually declining in popularity. Watch this little clip. This is actually what happened, what started people to question their morals.
The Beatles arrived in Japan today as their tour of the Far East continues. Across the Pacific in the United States, a furor is developing over comments John Lennon made. Quote, "Christianity will go. It will vanish and shrink. We're more popular than Jesus." Unquote.
Somebody was interviewing him in the BBC. I mean, he's talking about England in general. And he's saying that we've risen to a level of fame that is basically more relevant to people than Jesus is. And it didn't really catch a lot of like flack in England, except for when American journalists started to pick up on this and they started writing about it. And it caused quite a stir.
Yeah, and then his last line, I don't know which will go first, rock and roll or Christianity, which they recognize that they're not compatible by that statement, that they're against each other.
So to add to what Keith is saying, when you understand the term rock and roll, do you guys know where this came from?
That was like a term about like
Yes, it was because
having
kids,
sex.
teenagers were starting to listen to this kind of music, and while listening to it, we're having sex in the cars, and it started to rock and roll. And that's the reference to this music genre now. It all has to do with sex. And so he's just like, I don't know what's going to go first, Christianity or rock and roll. He's clearly saying Christianity's going to go. We're going to take over with this stuff.
The 60s was an interesting time because you have this sort of rebellion that's happening, and they're coming off of having these very sort of Leave It to Beaver type, you know, home lives, and they're rebelling against that system
And against their parents and
against God and all that. You know, it's kind of all together. So this is how the United States actually reacted to it.
This is Tommy Charles. If you, as an American teenager, are offended by statements from a group of foreign singers which strike at the very basis of our existence as God-fearing, patriotic citizens, then we urge you to take your Beatle records, pictures, and souvenirs to the pickup points about to be named. And on the night of the Beatles' appearance in Memphis, August 19th, they will be destroyed in a huge public bonfire at a place to be named soon. Stay tuned to Wacky for further development.
So they had big bonfires.
dude.
Very fascinating, though, if you take a step back. This is also the time where the United States is still probably reeling from civil rights, still dealing with civil rights. Here they are throwing the music away, but at the same time, you know, there's some other things in Christianity we're dealing with that we're not seeing as, you know, worthy of fighting for.
Yeah.
But I think it's really cool, though, that in a time of rebellion and uprisings and stuff like that, that people were actually standing up for their faith.
And these are like young people burning,
Yeah.
records. I mean, that's honestly, I think it's kind of cool.
When do you see, Gen Z? You're Gen Z,
Right? Yeah, I'm Gen Z.
When do you see Gen Z protesting in the streets like, we don't want this artist? They're
For
destroying our
something
faith.
worth other than like save the planet or save the turtles or stuff like that. Only electric cars. We only do it for the wrong reasons now.
Yeah.
You know, I think they're bringing up a good point, though, with how should we be treating some of these things? It's like, should we be distancing ourselves from the things that the world is promoting as this is very popular, but it really has nothing to do with Christianity living You know what I mean? The Bible's trying to get you to live as a Christian.
Mhm.
And so look at this verse right here. 2 Timothy 2:16. Keith, what does it say?
But avoid irreverent babble, for it will lead people into more and more ungodliness.
There was a lot of babble that was thrown around with them. You know, I mean, did the arrogance to say, you know, we're more important than Jesus. I mean, that right there tells me that he does not understand that the King of the universe humbled himself and came down here just to save us.
Mhm.
And it's like, you know, these guys had never ever really sat down and really considered, what does that mean? I don't know if you noticed in the very beginning, John Lennon was wearing a cross. But that was
I mean,
kind
a lot of them
interesting.
do.
You know what I mean? Like the early rock stars that
Yeah.
all wear crosses, but you know they have nothing to do with Christianity.
Just not only that, there's also like when he says Christianity will probably go first, I don't think he realized that he was not the first one attempting to do that.
Yeah.
You know, for years before that, I mean, we have the Dark Ages,
Yeah.
which was probably the biggest event movement in history to try to ban Christianity. Before that, there were the Romans, then there was, you know, the Dark Ages with the Catholic Church trying to put their own version of Christianity, which we know it's not. It was more the beast putting its making its power. And then he comes along and he doesn't have nearly as much influence as those people.
Right.
It was more out of arrogance, just like, yeah, we're gonna.
Their parents were coming right off of Elvis Presley. I mean, they
Yeah.
actually went through this like probably a decade before that.
Who
you know?
identified as a Christian as well, but then was hugely into the New Age and used God's name in vain all the time.
Oh yeah, you know, and you think about all this music is really just kind of putting these things.
Which, if I remember right, this is kind of like a strange trivia. I don't know who owns it now, but I think Michael Jackson owned both the Beatles and Elvis Presley's collection. Like he had rights to those.
That's right. I think that's correct.
But I don't know who has it now. I mean, with
Yeah.
Michael Jackson
With him
gone,
gone.
maybe
Yeah.
his kids.
Yeah. Listen to this last verse in 1 John 3:7-10. Little children, let no one deceive you, for whoever practices righteousness is righteous. I mean, that makes perfect sense, right?
Mhm.
If you want to be righteous, you're going to want to practice that, right? As he is righteous. Whoever makes practice of sinning is of the devil, and the devil has been sinning from the beginning. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. All of these rebellious and these self-centered ideas, I mean, thinking that you are bigger than God, that really originates with Lucifer. I mean, that single thought is actually really Satan's first, I want to be bigger than God. And here we see that being perpetuated with the Beatles, right? No one born of God makes a practice of sinning, for God's seed abides in him, and he cannot keep sinning because he has been born of God. By this it is evident who are the children of God and who are the children of the devil. It's pretty simple. The Bible's just laying it out there going, look, you want to follow people, you want to do things that are going to lead you into righteousness, practicing righteousness, upholding holy things. Those things are what the Bible's wanting you to promote. Doing away with the worldly kind of push. And right now we're seeing this weird blend of even Christians basically becoming super worldly. It's like they're identifying as Christian, but then they're just anything but. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God, nor the one who does not love his brother. I think if you truly loved your brothers and sisters, you wouldn't want to do anything that would cause someone's salvation to be forfeited, would you?
Right.
Right.
I think that's what we see here.
I was talking to you before about Katy Perry and the Super Bowl and her performance. And, you know, it's really interesting when you see all of these people just like in the stadium watching her, and then all these people at home watching her, all over the world watching her. And at the end, she gets lifted up on this star and just paraded around the stadium. And it's really crazy that that's what's being offered to Jesus in Matthew 4 is, hey, I'll give you the whole world. Just bow down and worship me. But, you know, now they're being worshiped by the whole world, but it leads to death.
That's right.
You know, and it's Jesus who changes the heart, who cleanses us from sin, who purifies us, who the world sees as weak, but God sees as, no, they are actually strong in me. They have, you know, love not their lives unto death. Some have died for their faith. And I think that's really the road for us that we need to walk as Christians, or even if you're not a believer yet, to try it out, because this is not happiness, like this is not what's going to bring life and joy and peace to follow Satan, to follow a guy named Aleister Crowley, who is a Satan follower. It's God. And, we want to morph and change our lives according to his laws and his commandments and his way of living, because that is the source of life. This just brings death.
You can see many people who have been held up to this kind of standard over their lifetime. This seems to happen again and again and again.
But we're a long way from burning, records of the Beatles. I think they have, great sales even now.
Yeah.
So, it's a thing of the past. People don't think that way anymore.
We're bringing them back more than we're taking them away.
Exactly. I mean, they just
now
want a
the
Grammy.
Yeah. Which is putting these guys in front of everybody's minds once again. But I think that you guys, the Bible constantly wants to push us to put on the robe of righteousness.
Yep.
Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, right? That's what Jesus is really wanting to do, transform our lives, our tastes, our desires, so that they're not like just focused on these worldly ambitions and things. So hope you had a blessing from this. Like and share this video. We'll see you guys on the next one.